here and that lets you save.
Look here.
True Form Life.
Green look on it.
Hey, and welcome to another edition of Exploring Mind and Body. I'll be your host this evening, True Form's Taddia, fitness expert. I've got some exciting news for you right off the bat. Tonight we're featuring Dan Millman as a guest. That's right, the ever-popular author, most frequently recognized for The Peaceful Warrior, one of my personal favorite books, along with so many other teachings Dan presents. We also have healthy tips, some exciting news from Bean Brokers and Health Street, along with an event from the Simple Life Girls. All that and so much more coming up on...
This is Exploring Mind and Body with True Form's Taddia, fitness expert on 96.5 CKFM.
All right, so I asked Dan Millman to do an interview with us because he's someone that I really respect in all fields that he's involved in. You know, he was an Olympic champion. He teaches martial arts. He writes incredible books. He's actually one of my favorite authors, and he wrote The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, which that book really inspired me and helped me change my life for the better. So we're really happy to have him with us and couldn't be more thankful for him to give us some of our time. So without further ado, this is Dan and I's interview.
This segment brought to you in part by the CLC Fitness Center.
All right, Dan, I'd like to welcome you to one of our editions of Exploring Mind and Body. And I'd like to thank you very much for doing this interview with us.
Oh, I'm happy to be here with you.
Okay, so... you know, I really enjoy your books myself. On this show in particular, we've been doing Book of the Week, and I've mentioned a couple of your books. Me personally, as we talked about, Body Mind Mastery is one of my favorite books, and I've recommended that numerous times. And, you know, us both being athletes, I think it's very beneficial, and I like how you were saying that it's not only for the average person or for athletes, but for the average person as well.
Well, Drew, being fellow athletes, we have a way of communicating and understanding one another that many people who haven't done striving and gone through the process of learning and the frustrations and the ups and downs, and whether it's in sports or playing a musical instrument, they can't quite understand that process. For example, you and I both very well know that everything is difficult until it becomes easy. We also know that there are times, whether it's in the sport or in a martial art or any form of training or even in a relationship or at work, sometimes things seem to fall apart and everything seems to get worse, a crisis point. We don't know what we're doing, we feel like we were better at it weeks or months ago. But what we don't often realize until we gain experience is sometimes those crisis times are when the learning is really happening. And after those crunches, we make a breakthrough of some kind and an improvement, whether it's a relationship or in sports. So I constantly see sports as a metaphor of life, as a way to learn about ourselves and our life, which is why I recommend to athletes, don't dedicate your life to your sport, dedicate your sport to your life.
That's great. I couldn't agree more with that.
I figured.
And I've been able to recommend that book a number of times to, you know, clients and friends, so they've been able to benefit from it as well. So it's reaching quite a few people. And then, of course, there's The Peaceful Warrior, which, you know, I'm sure everyone's heard of. And then again, that's been able to touch myself, you know, and improve myself on a personal level, and so many other people. Do you have a favorite book? Like, I know every pieces of art are close and personal. Do you have a favorite one?
Well, even though this metaphor has been probably run into the ground, it feels new to me that when someone writes a book, it is very much like, as far as I can know, as being a male, process of giving birth. In other words, there's a conception, there's a gestation period, there are labor pains, and finally birth announcements when you send your child, so to speak, out into the world. So I have 15 books, 15 children out there. So if somebody's married and has 3 children and they ask me, what's your favorite book, I say, well, who's your favorite child? And they go, well, I don't really have a favorite. They're all different. And that's exactly how I feel about my books. So in a sense, my preoccupation is the one I'm writing at the moment. That's the one I'm most focused on, like a new child. But each book is a different facet of what I call a peaceful warrior's approach to living. And what the term peaceful warrior means, of course, is the acknowledgement that we're all striving to live with a peaceful heart. But there are times we need a warrior spirit because it takes courage to live in this world. And rather than get too general about just living in the world, since you're focused on fitness and sports as well, it's important to understand that sports are a form of voluntary adversity. You know, we've all gone through physical, emotional, mental difficulties, and we become stronger and wiser and maybe even more compassionate for having gone through those difficulties.
Right.
It's a form of spiritual weightlifting. And so when people take on sports or a fitness training, it's like life, but more so. So they can learn a lot about themselves and their lives in the process of training. For example, coming up in early March this year, I'm teaching my last courage training. I taught it for 14 years, but it's so labor-intensive. For various reasons, I decided to retire it, but I'm bringing it back because my staff convinced me to. They love it so much.
That's great.
So we're teaching, and this is a training about knife fighting.
Right.
But, you know, who cares about knife fighting? How many times we're going to need that in our lives? However, as a metaphor of life, you can't beat it in terms of learning about flow and learning about all the laws of the universe in terms of how they apply to our lives. So that's why anybody who does training is really learning much more than they might realize if they're just overly focused on points and winning and losing and so on.
Okay. Yeah. I've read about your knife training there, and it sounds really interesting. So I'm glad some more people get to experience that before you end that chapter of your life.
Yeah.
You know, just a quick question about releasing some of your artworks. Like, I create some things myself, and sometimes after it's created, it's tough to let it go. Do you have any issues around that?
Well, that is an interesting question, because since I brought up that metaphor about, you know, giving birth, I mean, when you paint, when you're an artist, whether you do it with words or images, some kind of medium, you know, in terms of painting, drawing, some parents have trouble letting go of their kids.
Right.
But at some point, it has to find its own way in the world. So I think we imagine it's limited, you know, that we're limited, and I have a number of words in me, and that's it, or I have only so many paintings. But one just draws forth the other. It just opens us up to giving more. So every one we let go of, it opens a space for new ones to come. It's the same analogy as if you want to swim across a swimming pool, you got to let go of one side before you get to the other. So
right, it's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay, and so being so involved in gymnastics, for me personally, I do a lot of full body exercises that really interest me, and it amazes me or fascinates me about the strength and body control it takes for gymnastics to do what they do. I've actually set myself a small goal of doing a handstand, which sounds kind of funny telling that to a world champion. But do you miss gymnastics at all, or do you do anything within that in your life right now?
First of all, yes. When I was a young man, I just loved jumping on the trampoline and trying flips on the ground and handsprings and so on. I never thought about it as a way of bodybuilding, but it's true. Gymnasts do get pretty muscular bodies because they work with their whole body weight. I never heard of weightlifting. I got very strong as a gymnast. I used to work out at what they call Muscle Beach, down in Santa Monica, and we do things flying off the rings, doing somersaults and doubles and triples and all that. And the bodybuilders were there, and they would just be pumping these weights up and down, and they'd get big muscles. But we could do so much more. So it wasn't about I'm going to sculpt my body. That just happened as a side benefit. So I can appreciate doing calisthenic type activities. One never needs to actually have a set of weights,
right,
except as remedial exercise. If one does things, you can do slow motion push-ups, slow motion squats, even slow motion sit-ups. That slow motion is tremendous, and working with one's body weight at different angles. Now, no, you shouldn't be at all chagrined about saying you'd like to learn, work with handstands, because that's something I do sometimes when I give lectures. I start with a handstand. People get a big kick out of it because I'm turning 66 next month, and I still do twisting somersaults on the trampoline and all that.
That's great.
But I don't tumble as much. At my age, the pounding, it doesn't feel as good as it used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great sport for anybody just to learn basic gymnastics. In fact, next week I'm going to an Aikido school. I've been invited just to teach handstands and cartwheels there, and it's a lot of fun for adults to learn that.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm really enjoying it too.
Great.
But, okay, just to wrap things up here, I was wondering if you wanted to say anything about your new project coming out.
Well, it's too early to talk about. You know, you ask an author about a new book, and they'll either tell you too much or too little, and I'm in the too little phase. Until I have a draft done, don't like to talk about it. But anybody who's curious about my work, about the Peaceful Warrior's Way, and the way I teach, which is pretty grounded, you know, head in the clouds, feet on the ground. Anybody who's curious about that can just go to my website. I have a lot of interesting items at the website, and it's peacefulwarrior.com. For example, if someone clicks on Life Purpose, they can go put in their date of birth in a Life Purpose calculator and immediately see some interesting, like a paragraph, a teaser, about some fundamental issues on their life path that's different from other people's. So people are welcome to do that, and or get on my email list if they're interested in doing so. But peacefulwarrior.com, that's the central clearinghouse. Okay.
Great. Then, once again, we can't thank you enough for joining us and giving us some of your time. I really appreciate that.
Well, I wish you and your listeners all the best, Drew, and thanks for having me on.
Okay. Thanks very much, Dan. Take care.
You bet.
Bye now.
This segment has been brought to you in part by Health Street. True Form Life. This segment brought to you by Shoppers Drug Mart.
All right, in this segment, I want to talk about some healthy tips, some quick hitters, so get your pens ready. Be conscious of guilt. Just because you've had a bad day doesn't mean you have to fall off the wagon completely. We've all had those days. There's nothing wrong with starting over. Jump right on track the next day. Enjoy your food. Don't eat it too fast. This causes us to eat more and feel sick after, not to mention guilty. Most of us aren't getting enough fiber throughout the day. This is especially important for women. 25 to 30 grams of fiber is the daily recommended allowance. Add cinnamon to your diet. Shakes, oatmeal, cereal are all great places to start. Cinnamon has proven to help the body burn fat. Avoid white breads and white pastas. If you love your carbs, opt for better options. Try whole grain bread and whole wheat pastas. The same goes for white rice. Try brown rice or wild rice. Clean out your cupboards. Get rid of those foods that don't need to be in there, and we all have them. Out of sight, out of mind. Most of the time we reach for those unhealthy foods because they're right in front of us. Focus on being fit and healthy, not the scale. Many times we forget how well we're doing and how well we're staying on track, not to mention we have more energy and feel great. Stay away from that scale. Eat consciously. Don't swallow your food whole. If you're paying attention to how and what you're eating, you'll enjoy your food more and won't have to worry so much about overeating. Find groups of supportive people, whether it be at the gym or a fitness group. Find supportive, encouraging people that help you reach your goals, not hold you back. Make small changes. It's easy to fall off track if you try to make huge changes in your life, health-wise. Make small changes until it becomes a way of life. Carry nuts or trail mix everywhere you go. Not only do nuts satisfy the hunger, but they have many benefits and will also help your metabolism keep running and burning fat. Try to minimize your caffeine intake. Not only is caffeine a diuretic, which will take away from the amount of water you consume, but caffeine hangs out with their good friend named cortisol, who always brings along stress. Reduce your stress by reducing your caffeine beverages. And our last tip in this segment, record. See if you can record everything. Record how often you're working out. Start a nutrition journal. And find someone to check it. This keeps you accountable not only to yourself, but to someone else. One of the big reasons our members keep journals is accountability. If you know you have to write it down, there's a better chance you won't miss a workout or consume the food you know you shouldn't.
True Form Life.
All right, I wanted to send out a quick reminder about live streaming. I'm going to be doing live streaming out of the country. So if you guys want to check out a free workout, look into Ustream, and then you can find my True Form channel. I'm going to do live workouts at 3:45 p.m. on January 23rd, 25th, and 27th. I announced on the last show True Form's Complete Truth Protein Powder is now available at Bean Brokers. This week, they're going to start putting True Form's powder in their King Shake and in their Peanut Butter Protein Shake. So stop by Bean Brokers if you want to try out some of our brand new powder. Bean Brokers isn't just another coffee shop. They're making a real push to offer healthier choices.